In a world filled with chaos and uncertainty, find peace, guidance, inspiration, and wisdom with Abdul Fattah Adeyemi's official app.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. The Quranic stories are all about those who are victorious, not those who are victims. The Quran tells many beautiful stories, and there are narratives that span centuries and civilizations in the Quran, from the humble deserts to the mighty palaces of kings. These are not tales of defeat. These are not stories of despair. These are not stories of helplessness. They are accounts of victory in the truest sense of victory. And this victory, the victories of these prophets, are not over lands or wealth alone, but over despair, victory over tyranny, victory over temptation, and victory over the trials of the soul. The Quranic heroes, the prophets and righteous personalities are victors. They are not victims, for their triumph lies in their steadfastness, their faith, and their submission to the divine will of Almighty Allah. And I want you to take the story of Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, for instance. For 950 years, he preached the message of Tawheed. He endured the mockery. He endured the rejection. He endured even the betrayal from his own family. And outwardly, a person may think he failed. His followers were few, and the world around him drowned in disbelief. Yet, the victory of Noah was not measured by numbers, but by the steadfast commitment to his mission. His ark became the symbol of salvation. It carries not just a handful of believers, but the hope of the continuity of the faith in Allah. You see that in Quran chapter 71 verse 1. And from the perseverance of Noah, we learn the true victory lies in remaining steadfast in the face of overwhelming odds that may be against you. The story of Noah, he was not a victim of the people that he preached to that didn't believe in him, but he became victorious at the end of it all. That is an inspiration for all of us. Then look at Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, a lone figure that was standing against an empire of idolatry, defied his people and their king. He was thrown into a blazing fire and he emerged unscathed by the will of Almighty Allah. His faith, as pure as the flames, were fierce. Allah gave him that victory. He was not a victim of society's cruelty. He was the victor who redefined courage and trust in Almighty Allah. That was Ibrahim. His sacrifice, symbolized by his willingness to offer his beloved son, became a timeless lesson in submission, and it is celebrated annually by Muslims all over the world. Then look at Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. He was thrown into the well by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned on false charges. Yet, from the depth of betrayal and despair, Yusuf rose to become a ruler in Egypt. He embodied forgiveness and wisdom. And what you must understand from here is this: he was not a weak person. He was not a victim. A weak person cannot be said to be good at forgiving others. Because even if you don't want to forgive, you don't have the power to take revenge. The person whose forgiveness of others is most valuable in the sight of Allah is the one that has the power to take revenge, yet he forgave. I need you to begin to understand this is the meaning of being a victor. Somebody who is victorious is somebody who can forgive, not somebody who is weak and defeated. And you saw what happened to him eventually. He forgave his brothers because he had the power to take revenge. And his forgiveness is supposed to be a lesson for all of us to learn. Then consider Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. Don't get it twisted. Musa was not a victim to Fir'aun. And that story was not about Fir'aun. The story was about Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. You observe all of his trials with Fir'aun. He led his people out of bondage eventually. He split the sea by Allah's command, and he shattered the chains of oppression with the power of Allah's divine revelation. His life was marked by challenges, and despite these challenges, his legacy is one of liberation and courage and trust in Almighty Allah. For you to see, Musa was not a weak person. He was a strong personality. Remember when he gave somebody a blow and the person died 7 times? The Quran didn't mention 7 times, I'm just adding it. It's like 1 blow, 7 deaths. That was not a weak person. And eventually, when Allah asked him, وَمَا تِلْكَ بِيَمِينِكَ يَا Musa? What's that thing you are holding, O Musa? قَالَ هِيَ عَصَايَ, it's my staff. أَتَوَكَّأُ عَلَيْهِ, I recline on it. وَأَهُشُّ بِهَا عَلَىٰ غَنَمِي, and I used to beat down fodders for my flocks. وَلِيَ فِيهَا مَهَارِبُ أُخْرَى, there are many other things I use it for. And Allah said, Musa, I know. Drop that staff you are holding. And when Musa dropped the staff, you know what happened? The stick hit the ground, and the stick did not stay still. It began to move and to quiver. It began to waver and began to be animated. And lo and behold, what happened? That stick, that staff became a snake. And for a person who is just seeing this story for the first time, you would think that, okay, well, it was a dead stick, then it became a snake. No, it was a complete transformation from plant kingdom to animal kingdom. I didn't mean that the stick just started growing leaves. Say, okay, it was dead and came to life. It didn't just come to life. It moved from plant kingdom to become an animal. And it was moving and writhing, and Musa ran because he saw what he never expected. And Allah said, excuse me, where are you going? Go back, pick your staff. Didn't you tell me it was your staff? Go and pick your staff. Now, my staff has now become somebody's snake. And Allah asked him to pick it back. Between you and me now, I was not there too. If you were there, and Allah asked you to pick the snake, will you pick from the head or will you pick from the tail? Honestly, you want to pick from the tail. It will make more sense. So you just like move around, then turn around, see how you can grab it by the tail. But the Allah that I know will not want Musa to pick by the tail. And the Musa we are talking about is not somebody that will pick by the tail. I believe strongly that Musa gripped the head of the snake. If you could grip the head of the snake, then you can face someone like Pharaoh. The story is not about a weak person. The story is about a strong man. And so it was described by one of those 2 ladies, the daughters of Shu'aib. He said, one of the daughters said, oh my father, ista'jir'u, inna khayra man ista'jarta al-qawiyyul amin. Hire this man, because the best person you can hire is a strong person that is trustworthy. Now, the story of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who happened to be the conqueror that declared forgiveness for his oppressors when he had Dukhulul Makkah, the Fathu Makkah. Allah says, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. Yaghfiru laka Allahu ma taqaddama min dhanbik wa ma ta'akhkhar wa yutimma ni'matahu alayk wa yahdiyaka siratan mustaqima wa yansuraka Allahu nasran aziza. Allah said, indeed, I've already opened Makkah for you. I've already granted you a manifest and a clear conquest, a manifest victory. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not play victim with the people of Makkah. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not gather weak people around himself. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gathered the people that he knew were strong enough for the faith. For you to understand very well, I'm saying it again and again, Islam is a religion of power. Islam is a religion of strength. Islam is a religion of victory. But it all depends on your perceptions about what you see and what happens to you in life. Let me tell you about this perception. You all know Abu Hanifa, and one of the 4 rightly guided caliphs. There's a well-known story of Abu Hanifa, Imam Abu Hanifa. He was imprisoned with a very notorious thief. He had problem with the caliph of those days, Muhammad al-Mansur. There was a debate. And Imam Abu Hanifa's own side of the story is that no, the Quran is the word and revelation of Almighty Allah. And then the other scholars, they had different opinions. And because that was the opinion of the king himself, all of the other scholars took to the side of the king. But Imam Abu Hanifa stood aside. He said, no, I will not accept for you to adulterate this Quran. The Quran is what it is. So what happened? They grabbed him, they beat him up, they removed his turban. Somebody kicked him from behind, he fell. And they dragged him like that, removed his clothes eventually. And people were like, our Imam, our Imam. They put handcuffs on him and they shackled his legs. And they were dragging him like a slave, like a prisoner, like a thief. They dragged him into prison. But Imam Abu Hanifa will still not change his mind. And eventually, he met this thief that happened to be notorious and the head of all thieves in that place. And the thief just saw Imam. He will crouch to one corner. He will be doing askar. He will be looking morose. He will be looking sad. Because part of the punishment of Abu Hanifa was that he should be flogged every morning and evening. Then one day, the thief approached him. And the thief said, they flogged me 1,000 every day. But you know the difference between you and me, Abu Hanifa. You are supposed to be happy that you are being flogged like this and humiliated. Then Abu Hanifa looked up. Why? Look at what they did to me. The thief said, you see, you are being flogged for being righteous, while I am being flogged for committing crimes. Are you not lucky? We are suffering punishment but for two different things. You are being punished because you go to paradise. I am being punished because I'll go to hell. You are being punished for defending the book of Allah. I am being punished for defiling the book of Allah. You should consider yourself lucky. Then from that day on, the perception of Abu Hanifa changed. And he began to almost enjoy whenever he was being flogged for that. Because he knew, yes, I'm being flogged actually because I defended the cause of Allah. Now, your perception for suffering, for trials, for things you go through in life, you have to be sure you have a good reason for suffering. You know, some suffering in life, Allah will be like, hey, yeah, you suffer, then I will compensate you for suffering, right? You know that. But there are some sufferings, if you suffer for nothing. You suffer for nada, no reward for your suffering. So ensure that your suffering and your trials are on the path of Allah. An armed robber that is being resilient, running away from being caught by the police, that is resilience now, isn't it? And you're still hardworking now, right? He's still very strong, isn't he? But still, is he going to be punished for what he has done? But for somebody who is resilient on the path of Allah, you should be happy that Allah gave you the opportunity to pass through some trials. But be very sure that you are going through trials and tests of Allah not because you are weak, not because you are naive, not because you are ignorant, and not because you are stupid, and not because you have victim mentality. You are going through trials because Allah has brought it, not that you brought it upon yourself. وَمَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ وَيَعْفُ عَنْ كَثِيرٍ. Many of the trials that happen to us is because of what our hands has put forth. We cause most of it by ourselves. Beware, there are consequences. Many of us are not going through trials from Allah. We're only going through the consequences of our weaknesses and our stupid actions. Sorry, I'm using that word. The victim mentality is the shackle of the mind. If anything happens to you, be like, hey, yeah, what can I do? Hey, yeah, I don't have power. Hey, yeah. This victim mentality is a prison that is built not of steel, but of sorrow. Somebody can remove the steel, but they can't remove the sorrow that you brought against yourself. It is where the inmate of the prison, it is where they carry the weight of every hardship, every slight, and every failure as an unbearable burden. It's a perspective that narrows the soul, and you begin to whisper, why me? Why me? When you hear somebody says, why me? That person is having a victim mentality. The victim mentality clings to pain as if the pain were a badge of identity. Somebody will be like just telling stories of helplessness, stories of blame, stories of despair. And some people just like to wear their sufferings because they want people to be proud of them that they are suffering. When was the last time you ever see a hadith that tells you that suffering should be something you should be proud of? And there are some people, when you are telling, you see, I went through and so, they'll be like, you have not seen anything. Let me tell you what I went through. Is it a competition to show, okay, who suffers more, you or me? The people you see speak like that, they see the storm and they ask why the sun has forsaken them. Why? They do not see the lesson of the rain, and they do not see the cleansing of the earth or the renewal that follows the rainfall. Indeed, they lament the wetness of the rain, the discomfort and the cold. They allow the clouds to obscure the infinite possibilities of the horizon. The victim mentality feeds on self-pity. Then you begin to organize pity party for yourself. The victim mentality feeds on your self-pity, and they assign power to external forces. You look for people to blame. You look for circumstances. You look for poverty to blame. You look for weaknesses to blame. And sometimes you blame your destiny for bringing such weaknesses your way and for bringing such circumstances your way. It shrinks the hurt and blinds the eyes to the wisdom in trials, to the strength forged in adversity, and to the beauty of resilience. It cries out for justice, but often forgets that true justice begins from within. Are you just with yourself? It begins with the will to rise and reclaim control over your soul. Inna Allah la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Allah will not change your situation until you change what is within your heart. And the Quranic stories remind us that even the darkest moments are not final destinations in our lives. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam could have chosen the victim's lament as he lay in the depths of a well or the shadows of a prison. He would have been complaining and complaining, but he embraced the light of trust. He changed his chains into stepping stones towards honor. To remain a victim is to remain stagnant. It is to drown in the mire of if only and what if, how I wish I had. And you forget that within every hardship lies the seed of opportunity. The victor mentality is the wing of the spirit. The victor mentality soars where the victims crawl. While other people don't know what they want to do, you already figure out where you are going. It's a state of mind that sees trials as the bridges, not barriers, and challenges as calls to growth, not curses to endure. The victor does not ask, why me? But the victor asks, what can this actually teach me? A victor walks into the storm with unshaken faith. He knows that every gust of wind, every crash of the thunder is shaping them into something stronger, something greater. The victor knows that the tea bag will not let out the best of its flavor without the hot water. And when it's inside the hot water, it basks in it with resilience, knowing fully well that this is where the best of my flavors will be let out. The victors do not deny pain and did not dismiss adversity, but they embrace it as a teacher. They understand that refinement comes through the ordeal of hardship. The victor does not relinquish control to external forces. They remember that Allah is the ultimate planner, and that every trial is a part of a divine wisdom that is beyond human comprehension. This mentality is not born out of arrogance, but out of submission. Submission to the will of Allah, to the belief that the soul is never given a burden that is greater than what it can bear. La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. The victor mentality is embodied in the prophets. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam stood before the fire, not as a victim, but as a victor. And so you have a choice to make. Life presents choice to be a victim or a victor. The difference lies not in the circumstances, but in the response. The victim sees a test as a punishment. The victor sees it as an elevation. After every trial, Allah elevates you. And when you are passing through trial, you have in front of you the fact that Allah will promote you to a higher class. The victim bows to despair, but the victor bows to Allah. standing taller with every prostration. The Quranic narrative is a testament to the victor spirit. It calls out to the human soul. It urges us to rise above the victim mentality, to embrace the trials of life as gift in disguise, and to walk the path of the prophets who triumphed not because they were spared the hardship of life, but because they converted the hardship into worship. The lesson goes to all of us. Do not let the weight of your trials press pause in your life. Let them be the button that press play in your life, or that press fast forward in your life, to process your drawing closer to Allah and the ultimate victory of eternal bliss in the presence of Allah. And finally, for the women folk, if you observe the women mentioned in the glorious Quran, they were all matriarchs and great women. Great women were the ones you are to emulate in the glorious Quran. The story of Hannatu, the mother of Maryam, the mother of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. All of these women you hear mentioned were great women in Islam for all of you to emulate. And you see what you can do about them. They were mostly matriarchs. Matriarchs are women who are in control and in charge of their destinies. They were not laid down people who didn't have anything to do with their lives. You remember the story of Bilqis, the one that eventually married Suleiman. Bilqis was a matriarch. She was not just a woman like that. You should emulate her story. Know that the way Suleiman had his kingdom, Bilqis also had her queendom. You should understand, it is in that same story Allah mentioned the story of the Naml. The Namlu, that is the ant that was calling the other ants, Udkhulu masakinakum. Oh, you ants, enter into your holes, so that Suleiman and his people will not march you, will not step on you without knowing. And you see, it is called Namla. That Namla happened to be a female ant, the one that was in control and in charge. In other words, Muslims, we are not victims. We should be strong. We should be powerful. When trials come, trials should come not because we were weak, not because we didn't know what to do, but because Allah chose that trial for us and we can recognize it like that. When trials come in form of punishment, we should ask Allah's forgiveness. Perhaps we have been negligent in some of the things about our lives. And if you look at all of these prophets we have mentioned, you see that these episodes in their life were just part of the journeys of their life. Nabi Ayub, the one that was sick for a while, remember that he was a wealthy man before Allah tried him with this sickness. And after the sickness, Allah restored him back to his wealth. He didn't spend his life as a downtrodden person. Let the believers rise up to their duties and responsibilities. Let us not be weak anymore. Let us be very strong, and let us be the kind of powers to reckon with on earth, because this is what's supposed to be. Allah has designed it like that, so that Allah will make Islam to supersede every other way of life. That is the design of Islam. That's the principle of Islam, and that's the mentality of Islam, that we are victors. We are not victims. Assalamu alaikum.
Download the Abdel Fattah DME app now and start your journey to a more meaningful, purpose-driven life. Available for free on the App Store and Google Play. Join the community. Transform your life. Edit your universe.